Hi, I'm Darrel Tank. My website is 5pencilmethod.com, and I'm going to do a demonstration that I've waited a long time for, and I'm sure you're anxious to find out too, about electric erasers. There's been so many changes in the industry. They've been removing them from the market. They've been making changes that are critical to us and what we want to do. So I'm glad you're here joining me today, because you're going to find out right along with me what are some of the good things and the bad things about them. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do in this demonstration is to show you the eraser that I have just loved for many years. It's a wonderful eraser, but it's no longer on the market. But I thought it was still good for me to show you this so that we can set a standard. The other thing that is different about this is you'll notice that this has a pink eraser in it, and they have taken these off the market as well. It's really sad to watch a lot of these things go away, and I'd like to be able to know that when I recommend something to you that it's going to be something you're going to have available. But let's just go ahead and do the best we can with what's on the market, and we'll try and find out the best alternative. But you'll notice that when they come out of the box or wherever you're getting them, they will have a squared off end. But ours is going to have a tip on it. It's going to have a point. And the way I get that point is that I use an emery board, which is available at most art stores. You should be able to pick this up. There's probably a number of other ways. You could probably use sandpaper if that's all you had. But I want to be able to wear this down to a point and hone this on this. Be patient, because if you press too hard or you try and do it too quick, you could actually have this grind down lopsided, and you'll have a vibration instead of a nice smooth application of that point when you want to take out a nice clean little hair or a highlight. So now again, I'm going to use this as a standard. I know it's not available, but we can now take each one of the other ones that I'm going to demonstrate and compare them to this. So let's go ahead and move on to the first eraser. First of all, let's go ahead and take a look at Staedtler's Mars cordless electric erasing machine. It's kind of funny that some of these call it a little different. I just call it an electric eraser. But this is one of the first ones that I turned to trying to replace my good Elite that I've liked for so many years, and I wasn't really very happy with it. I did not like the revolutions per minute. It wasn't quite as fast as some of the ones that I had been used to. And also there's a couple things about this particular style that I really wasn't excited about, in that this plugs into the front. I don't know why they designed this like this. Setting it on the table, it seems like it should come out of the back. I just didn't really care for that. One of the good things about it, though, and a lot of the different electric eraser companies are addressing, is that they have tried to design something that fits ergonomically styled into your hand, so that it's more comfortable, it isn't so cumbersome, and they've made them so that a left-handed or a right-handed person could use them fairly easily. And so these are some of the things that are really nice. One of the things, again, that I mentioned before is the pink erasers aren't available anymore, and we're having to turn to what they call as a magic rub, or a little bit of a vinyl strip. Again, it's squared off, so we're going to have to sharpen it. One of the things that I noticed about this eraser, as I try to sharpen this, the chuck does not grip it very tightly. And I'll start having this thing either extend out or move in because it's actually moving in the chuck. One thing you have to do is you have to be extremely patient. Once you get this sharpened down, then you're kind of home free, except for touching up the point. But if you get too fast, it'll start flicking off little rolls, because it's a vinyl. It isn't an eraser, so to speak. Also, if I press too hard, I again get a lopsided point. I still do not know why that happens, but as I am grinding this down too, you'll see how this is starting to extend, because their chuck doesn't even grip their own eraser strip. I don't want this thing to be able to be pulled out like that. I should have to break it off. It should grip it tight enough that I shouldn't have to worry about this. And you'll see how floppy this is. There are a couple other erasers that I have found that other manufacturers make, and I think you can probably see the difference here. The stiffness in one versus the other is pretty obvious. It'll give you a more stable point to use. And this one is going to not only be a little more difficult to sharpen, but it also is very critical when you are deciding where to put this in the chuck is you'll have flipping. If it's too long, you'll have more and more of this vibration. See, the faster I go, the more it has a tendency to flare out, and so I have to be very careful and get it very close, and that puts it closer to this chuck. So you have to really be careful, because if you're erasing something and you're not paying attention, this chuck sticks out far enough that you can actually damage your paper or your drawing. So this is one of the critical things, not only because of the eraser itself, but the strip that they're using. It's just too soft. Now, we can try to deal with that, and we could also look for something that's a little stiffer, but it makes all the difference in the world in how you're going to be able to grind down the tip. So these are some of the things you want to be careful about. And again, I did not find this to be a very ideal eraser in my mind. The next model that I want to show you is one that I actually purchased at the same time as I did the 52701. This is the 2850C KOH-I-NOOR, and it looks almost identical. And as I got them back to the classroom in the studio, I found that there is definitely a difference. Looks aren't everything. The mechanism in this is much better. It has a much higher RPM, it's much smoother in its running, and evidently is much more durable, because these, where they would obviously have mechanical problems within a short time, this one seemed to just purr along, and I didn't run into any problems. My students like them, yet unfortunately this is another problem. This is why, one reason why it's been so hard to do a demonstration is because they discontinued this model. They keep doing these things, and we have to just keep experimenting and trying to find something that is suitable. But because this is a good eraser, it has great RPM, let's go ahead and use it as an opportunity to see how we might use this emery board to create our point. And so one thing that we really want to take into consideration is have patience. We want to be able to do this slowly and not just figure, oh, I'm just going to grind this thing down quicker. The quicker you grind this down, the less of an accurate point you're going to have. It has a tendency to almost be a little choppy, vibrate the end. As I put a lot of pressure on here, I'm going to start having this thing wobble, and it's just going to affect quite a bit. So you really want to be patient, do a little bit at a time, especially with this vinyl. It's not near the same as it was when I used to erase or used to grind down the points on my pink erasers. And this vinyl has a tendency, again, to roll off. You may not be able to see this, maybe in the close-up camera. You can see that we get these little rolled off little strips. The harder you push on that, the more bigger pieces you're going to have come off. And so we just want to be as careful as we can to do as little as possible. The next model I want to show you is one that KOH-I-NOOR put out to replace the 2850C that they discontinued. It is in no way the same machine. It's done by a completely different manufacturer, and it's the E1200. I was interested in it because, again, there are a few things, just like the cord coming out the back. Wow, they finally improved that. This is quite ergonomically styled, and yet there are a few things about it that when I had some of my students try it, they had a hard time gripping it because it was too slick, too smooth. And their hands were just maybe a little drier or too small, and it had a tendency to kind of, be unstable in their hand. The other thing that I was really unimpressed with, and it may not have had anything to do with anything, but I didn't like the sound. It sounds like a tractor. And in my mechanical experience, I just thought, uh-oh, boy, this doesn't sound very good. Maybe it doesn't have as good a quality of bearings, or the mechanism in here isn't as good a quality. But I did not have a chance to try it. And then we started reading the reviews. The reviews have been very poor. People have been running into all kinds of problems with this. It's a shame because it gives KOH-I-NOOR a bad reputation. The other one, that 2850C, again, if you have that one, it's an excellent machine. But this one is one that I guess right from the start I'd say avoid. Not from my experience, but my immediate impressions and the reviews are just, again, very poor. And I haven't used it long enough to really say how long it would last. I want to show you another model put out by Staedtler. And it is a corded eraser. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. There are some things that are very nice about it. I use it enough to really like how it functions. But these are some of the problems. You're restricted by a cord. You can't just freely walk around or have it not, drag your pencils and erasers and everything else you have on the table off. But obviously, if you hear that, listen how quiet that is. It seems to be very durable, good RPMs, very smooth. It isn't, like the last one we looked at that's like a tractor running. And it seems to be light enough and balanced enough that I can get some good work done with this and have some accuracy. Now there are some disadvantages, and we'll continue looking at some of the other erasers, but I think overall this is a pretty good effort on Staedtler's part. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a model that's completely different. This starts going into a whole other category.